part 2. This time we really are going to talk about Zephaniah. Sorry about that. I don't do this on purpose. So, do this on purpose, meaning say I'm going to talk about one thing and go on to a completely other thing. We were just talking about Haggai. So, the interesting thing about Zephaniah is that there's a few verses in chapters 1 and 2, just a few, which I'll address. But he stops, I mentioned he said something about the rapture. So if you look at chapter 1, verse 2, and I'm reading Stone's Tanakh, again, if you have different translation, King James or ISR or whatever, might read different, but it says, verse 2, I will utterly destroy everything from upon the face of the land. Nam Yahweh. I will utterly destroy everything. Well, I haven't sent the notes to you, Kurt. I'll send them. But if you go back and read this in Hebrew, the word is ayin or aleph somic pei, aleph somic pei. Aesop. Have you heard Aesop's fables? This is the same word, Aesop. Aesop's fables. What's Aesop's fables have to do with utterly destroying? Well, you look up in the dictionary, and the word Aesop means harvest, gather, collect, assemble, a collection. So Aesop's fables, was there a man named Aesop who gathered up a bunch of fables, fairy tales, little moral stories to tell the children to illustrate ways for them to behave themselves, or else they're going to get themselves in trouble in life? Well, that's what Aesop's fables were from the old world, old school. It's a Hebrew word that means collection. So whether there was a man named Aesop, woman, somebody that put together the collection, or the fact that that was a Hebrew word meaning this is the collection of fables. See, in English, we don't have any track of that. You can also realize that aleph somic pei, well, aleph is the prefix, and if you put yod somic pei, the word is Yosef, which if you put yod vav somic pei, that's the word Joseph. So if you look at somic pei, because aleph or yod can both be prefix, it means basin, goblet, or threshold. Well, what's a basin or a goblet? It's a place where you collect. Here's a cup and you pour stuff into it. That's why Yosef, held a goblet and says, don't you know that by this I divine mysteries? And because it was his name. His name meant goblet. Aleph somic pei hey, to be taken by death, received as a guest, to take in. It's an assembly or a meeting. Yod somic pei means continue, increase, or add. So is this word aleph somic pei, can that be the rapture? No, wait a minute. It says here, I will utterly destroy. Utterly destroy. It's the same word written twice. So what they've done is said, if aleph somic pei hey, this is what the translators have done, can mean like the Grim Reaper, the guy with the black hood and the skeleton guy with the scythe, there to collect and gather the hordes of humanity. Well, that's a harvesting and taking away, taken by death. So this must mean the destruction by the Grim Reaper. And when this word is mentioned twice, Esaf, he's going to really, really destroy. Or is this the rapture? He's going to really, really gather up his people and float them up into the sky. See, you don't know what it means. But it doesn't say I will utterly destroy. There's other words in Hebrew which mean destruction or utter destruction, and it's not this word. So what I'm saying is that, there's not a whole lot in Zephaniah here to talk about, and all of a sudden the first word out of the gate, and it's like, oh gosh, what have they done? Just saying. This is the kind of thing which tips you off that they have done something, and the only way to know what they did is to go back and look at the words and realize, well, how much of anything else that's here can we trust? Go back and look at the words. The whole point of this Skype thing here that we're doing is to equip you, allow you to recognize what you're looking at, what you're looking for, to tip you off. Look at, You know, when the dictionary tells you something, when to analyze word letter by letter means something, and you look here and it's like, it's different. Something's going on. And do you trust the professional translators who have got an agenda to perpetuate, or do you do your own analysis, or with your friends, or sit there and hope that he's going to give us some enlightenment that he's withheld from them over the years? And I say that because this is all part of the significance of what's being said in Zephaniah. Asaph, Esaph, kama el panei ha'adama. Everything from upon the face of the land, Nam Yahweh. Okay, so harvest, take away, remove. He's going to remove. The word kaf lamed can mean all, but it also means each, every, or any. And mem ayin lamed, from upon, panei, face, the land, ha'adama. But yet, hey, aleph, dalet mem, hey. Dalet mem, hey, dam, dama. Dam is blood, but it also, like dummy, means to resemble, to be like, equal in value, cease, stop, or silence. So why is Adam, I am similar, I'm equal in value, I am silent, I stop, I will cease? I mean, what do you read in the word Adama? But the concept of equal in value, that's mishpat. So is the word the land simply the land, or does it mean resemble, equal in value, cease, stop, silence? Let's go back and look at it then. I'm going to remove or gather and assemble or take away all from upon the face of equal in value, all at face value, everything at face value. What could he possibly be saying? Is the rapture at those? If this is talking about the rapture, is he saying, I'm going to reach in? There's a concept that we're supposed to become refined, polished, like mirrors of him. And when he looks down and sees his reflection in us, oh, that's one of mine, and that's one of mine. Remember, I did a video, Mountain Air 7, on that YouTube a couple years ago. I think it was sunset. We're on this guy's back porch up in the hills. And at a certain moment of the sunshine, as it was coming down, it would reflect off of any piece of glass or shiny thing out in the yard. And you could look over the landscape and it just looked like a dirt, barren hillside. Well, not barren, there's trees and stuff growing, but just a hillside. And all of a sudden, when the sun got to a certain point, anything that was a piece of glass reflected the sun into the eye of the person standing on the deck. And it's like, whoa, hey, look at all those things here, here, and here, and here, and here. And I remembered thinking at the time, wow, that's kind of a metaphor of us. We're supposed to become like him, polished reflection, mirror images of him. And at a certain moment, when he can look down and see himself reflected in us, this one's mine, this one's mine, this one's mine, this one's mine. And it's like, wow, well, who's he? That's where all of a sudden, who's the God you believe in makes a big difference. If you say, well, I don't like the God of the Bible, I don't like the God of the Old Testament, I don't like the God that's going to throw the devil into the lake of fire, my God is going to be like this, 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 or this, and you make up your own idolatrous, imaginary image God, is it him that's being reflected? He is who he is. It's our job as being his people to simply say, okay, whoever it is you are, you is. Thank you. I want you to be my Elohim, whatever that means. Whatever you're going to do, you're going to do. I trust you to be pure love, pure righteous, pure truth, pure justice, pure mercy and compassion. And if in that purity you rain down fire and brimstone on humans, and animals and plants, then if you're going to do that, you say you're going to do that, you think you have to do that because that's an expression of pure justice and pure mercy and compassion, even to the angelic spiritual entities. What do I know? I have a fallible, limited mind. But if you who are infallible and unlimited, and that's your sense of justice, then okay, I'm not going to build a fantasy idol in my mind that prohibits you from being you. What a dangerous thing to hold on to that kind of doctrine. Anyway, if we go on to verse 4, well, here, verse 2, I will utterly destroy everything from the land. And then verse 4, I will stretch out my hand against Judah, all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and cut off from it this place any remnant of the Baal and the memory of the ministers with the priests, and those who prostrate themselves in roost to the heavenly host, those who bow down and swear to Yahweh and swear by their king, and those who have turned back from following Yahweh, and those who have not sought nor required after him. Okay, blah, blah. You know, it's easy to throw that away and say, listen, I'm gonna mention a few movies, not that I'm recommending anybody see them because they're mentally brutal. Apocalypto, Mel Gibson. It's like, oh man, those Aztecs, those Mayans, to worship their sun god. On one occasion, historically, they found the remains of like 40,000 sacrificial human offerings. And they dragged them up. They found the pyramids, and they found this thing where they cut open, take their heart out, you know, and hold it up to the sun god. And the movie was showing them doing that. And in order to get those 40,000 victims, they had to have other squads of thugs go out into the woods and find innocent encampments of people, grab them, drag them in, and use them as hapless victims. And it's like, oh, come on, that's entertainment. We're going to watch that? Unless you're sick and twisted and evil and have a dark heart, you wouldn't even be entertained by that, by golly. No, wait a minute. That's what we're reading about in Zephaniah. What? That's the kind of thing those Aztecs and Mayans would do. No, that's the kind of thing that the Israelites would do. As a matter of fact, it's the kind of thing that the Canaanites were doing. And it was so, the terror, the pollution had gotten so saturated that Yahweh said, that's it, their time is up. And he told Israel, I'm sending you in to go clean them out. And Israel said, no, we're going to be their victims. And he said, oh gosh. And then they whined and complained. And Yahweh said, okay, then I'm going to wipe you out and raise up a new generation. That's the whole story of the Exodus, you know, being wandering around for 40 years. The Canaanites were so evil, wicked, mean, and nasty, doing stuff like in Apocalypto, that Yahweh was going to send in his troops, his Israel, to expunge them. And Israel was too scared and didn't want to do it. Israel thought that Yahweh was against them himself, against Israel, wouldn't trust him, wouldn't believe him. And so Yahweh had to raise up the next generation of Israelites, send them into the land, wiped out the Canaanites, and then a couple generations later, the Israelites themselves, it says in another place, another scripture, that they became worse than the Canaanites were, more evil, more corrupt. And it says here in Zephaniah 1 that Yahweh's going to so eradicate what Israel was doing that it'll never be remembered that Israel ever participated in such things other than this record we have in the scripture. So in other words, he's going to do to Israel essentially what he did to Sodom and Gomorrah, only it's not going to be completely desolated, kind of pretty much was. A remnant left. Sodom and Gomorrah had no remnant. But we don't look at ancient Israel and think apocalypto. We don't think, oh, this is what the Israelites were doing. This is what the people of God were doing. It is what they were doing. So he gives a list of all the bad things that the people were doing in order to bring the destruction. So here's the interesting thing about Zephaniah. Here's this list of all the stuff that they were doing. Those who bow to the heavenly hosts. Well, that's the constellations, the zodiac, the Mazarot. It's one thing to look at them and say, I think there's a story in there for us. It's another thing to bow down and worship him. We're not bowing down and worshiping. We're not appropriating power astrologically to them. So whatever study we were doing, which we will do, is about saying, what did Elohim say about himself, about Yahusha, about Israel in those constellations that has been lost to us? That's what we're looking at. We're not bowing down to the heavenly hosts. Those who swear to Yahweh, and swear to their king, what does that mean? That means that they what? Continue in their culture? In other words, if you say Yahweh is my Elohim, you cannot continue with your national culture if it varies from Yahweh being your Elohim. And that was one of the problems. The next problem, those who turn away from following Yahweh. The word turn away is nun samik vav gimel. Nun prefix sug means disassociate, retract, outside of fence, no longer called. So for me to say, I'm no longer going to call myself a Christian. I'm nesugging away from Christianity. Why? Because it's not of Yahuwah. So who has turned away from Yahuwah? I'm not one of those guys anymore. I'm not a Judaizer. I'm not a Gnostic. Not that Gnostics and Judaizers are the same, but I'm just saying, why would somebody turn away from Yahuwah? Because he's no longer their Elohim. And if somebody says, I don't like a God who's going to throw anybody into a lake of fire, whether it's a devil, a demon, or just a naughty boy. Those who have not sought Yahweh, the word seek is bakosh, bet kuf shin, nor those who have not inquired. And there the word inquire is drosh. Well, that's the drosh for like Bible study. Wait a minute. This is the problem? The problem is they haven't studied, they haven't seeked, they've disassociated themselves, even though they still pretend to use his name. Kind of, it's a cultural thing to say, oh yeah, we're people of God. Which God? It has nothing to do with Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, but chapter 1, verse 8 of Zephaniah, all those who wear foreign garments. Wear foreign garments? Is that like wearing a Santa Claus hat in December? Is that wearing a foreign garment? All who leap over the threshold. Leap over the threshold? What the? Well, apparently there was a certain pagan ritual back then, and everybody knew what it was. I don't know what it was, but there's a rabbinical footnote that you jump over the threshold to get luck. Is that like kissing under the mistletoe or something like that? There was some little goofy little custom that if you jump over the threshold, as they say, you're aligning with an ideology, a pagan ritual practice. That's part of the problem. The next thing was work to help masters filling their houses with injustice and deceit. So you could say, hey, listen, I'm not bought into this thing. I'm just doing the job for my master. So I'm going to go out and do all these evil, bad, rotten things. There was a guy who wrote a book I mentioned years ago called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And he wrote this book confessing to all these horrible things he did in the name of, I think it was Bechtel, in the name of America. And everybody that he hired thought they were doing a good job, but they were doing it to pillage third world nations. Injustice and deceit. And then the merchants who are going to wail when this all comes down. That kind of thing. Yahweh hates it. And he says, this is what's bringing all the trouble. Verse 12, those who say Yahweh won't intervene with either good or evil. Those who say, listen, whoever the God is up there, he set this thing in motion. It used to be called deism in the 1700s. They believe that whoever the creative genius was that made the earth just sets it up and sits there and watches it. Okay. If you think that's who Elohim is, you got the wrong Elohim. Verse 17, people who have sinned against Yahweh. What does it mean to sin against Yahweh? Not doing what he said to do. As Mark Gravel there has said before, righteousness is doing what Yahweh said in the Torah. Sin is not doing what he said to do or doing what he said not to do. It's pretty simple. If he said to do it, that's righteousness. If he said not to do it, that's evil. A little more than that. Righteous is good, evil is bad, harmful, calamity, but it also brings ruin and destruction. Anyway, chapter 2, verse 8. There's a whole list of those people are going to get in big trouble because they would taunt and jeer at the people of Yahweh when they got in trouble. So Yahweh's going to go and it's like a bunch of kids playing and everybody's doing bad stuff. And all of a sudden somebody's parents come in, they grab their kid and you're going to get it. And they yell at them and you're going to get spanked. I'm going to take you home. And for all the neighborhood kids go, too bad for you. Taunting and jeering when Yahweh starts to discipline his son, Israel. Okay, next, all you kids are going to get it because it's like those, reminds me of the story. Was it with Elisha? A bunch of neighborhood kids were taunting him, saying, get down, bald head or something. And all of a sudden the bears came out of the woods and ate them up, mauled a bunch of kids. Those who taunt and jeer when Yahweh disciplines his people are going to be in big trouble. Chapter 3, verse 1, it says, the filthy and polluted city of oppression. We'll look at that. Anyway, didn't listen, didn't accept correction, didn't trust, didn't draw near. The priests have desecrated the sacred Torah. Really? Why would the priests do that? How would they do that? What priests? Those guys, 4,000 years ago on the other side of the earth? Or is it us in our local neighborhoods now? The priests have desecrated the sacred Torah? This is the list of everything going wrong. And it's like, where's the homosexuality? That's not what's bringing his wrath. His wrath is this list right here in Zephaniah. Us, his people, not holding his accurate identity and teaching of his Torah. Wrong name, wrong day, wrong Moedim, wrong sense of justice, wrong sense of what is good, what is right. Didn't listen, didn't care who he was. We're going to teach a friendly gospel instead of a sacred Torah. That's what's bringing the trouble. It's not the bad things that bad people are doing. It's the wrong things that Yahweh's people are doing is bringing the trouble. So again, that means that the solution is in the hands of Yahuwah's people. And if those guys aren't going to change, we are empowered to make the change. And you get chapter 3, verse 8, therefore, just you wait. Just you wait. So if we look at, go back to chapter 2, verse 1, it says, improve yourselves and improve each other, O nation without desire. What does that mean? Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 1. It says right here, Stones Tanakh, improve yourselves and improve each other. But yet, if you look at the way it's written, it's Hey Tav Kuf Vav Shin Shin Vav. Hatakushosho. Kush. Kuf Shin is straw, stubble, chaff, something hard like rebar that you put in concrete, like straw that you put in adobe bricks to like bones in your body to give it form and structure. Where's the word improve? Isn't that the word tov? And then it repeats the word of a different derivation, vav, kuf, vav, shin, vav. So you look that up in the dictionary and you got hey tov, kuf, vav, shin means hardening or difficulty. Mem, kuf, shin, hey, difficult questions, hammered work. So if you take steel and you pound it, a blacksmith, you give it a tempering, a hardness. Minefield, typewriter keys, melon patch, artistically arranged, curled hair, braided hair, xylophone, something laid out very meticulously and specifically. Kind of like the stars in the sky, kind of like the Hebrew alphabet, particular arrangement all laid out. What's that got to do with the word improve yourself? Have they not given us an accurate translation here? Kufav sheen means chaff, straw, stubble, something burnable. I can't find in the dictionary anything that would even suggest it means improve yourself. If you look at hey kuf sheen, and I'm saying you put in other prefixes and suffixes, yods and vavs, and it means comparison or an analogy. Gosh, artistically arranged, like typewriter keys, a minefield where things are placed here and there, like this whole setup. The nation without nun kaf somic pay. Well, kaf somic pay is the word for silver. It's also the word for desire. So you get silver and you go buy something that you desire. Nun kaf somic means to acquire property. So if you desire to acquire property, you have to have a yearning, a longing, or you expect to get your money's worth. You hope for something, so you get the money together so that you can go get it and buy it. And he's saying, the nation that has no expectation, no desire, they don't expect to get anything. Well, then why are they doing whatever they're doing? They're not doing anything. They're just existing. Didn't he say my people perish for lack of a vision? That's kind of a synonym with this sentence. But then let's go back and look at this. The hardening, or because of the difficulties, they have no expectation. So imagine being the enemy of Israel. And I don't mean that nation over there, but the people of Israel scattered across the face of the earth. If you were the enemy of Israel and you wanted to take over the world, say with a one world government or one world economic plan, and you said, well, I know their Bible, their sacred books, have sacred advice in it for them. Let's hire our monks and clerics to analyze the scripture and find out every one of the places where they're told what to do so we can thwart it, stop it before it happens. If they come across this and say, because of hardening difficulties, if we can get them to not have any yearning or expectation, they're burnable. Okay, let's do that. Let's send in priests and clergy and prophets, prophetic voices, to take away their expectation. What expectation? Of Yahweh helping them, Yahweh saving them, Yahweh rescuing them and giving them a future, giving them an eternal covenant. Eradicate that from the translations, from the pulpit. Don't even let them hear that they have reason to hope. Then they're ours. We don't even have to fight against them, because somehow in the hoping of Yahweh's intervention, we empower him to intervene. Look at the next verse. Zephaniah 2, verse 2. Bet tet resh mem. Bet's a prefix meaning in the condition of, and then tet resh mem, it means to be done before, preceding, not yet, anticipation, or new beginning. In the condition of anticipating. Well, that's playing off the word in the previous verse, which is to acquire a property by having the desire of expectation. So it's something not yet done that you're anticipating. Ladat, lamed dalet tav, means born, birthed, or begotten. So it's basically saying not yet birthed. Het kuf is command, chok. Like the 10 commandments, or actually that's 10 devarim, but the word command is chok. Kaf mem zadi, like kaf prefix mem zadi. Well, mem zadi hey, mem zadi aleph means to find. Mem vav zadi, though, means chaff. Like chaff? Well, that's something to be burnable? See, now this, because mem zadi means chaff and kuf vav shin means chaff, there's something associated in these two verses that now you have to fit together, but you can't see that in the way it's translated. But mem zadi also means furnished with or inventory. And the next word is Hebrew. Wait a minute. Not yet, but the anticipation that needs to be birthed is to command or the command or at the command, like finding Hebrew, like being furnished with the inventory of provisions contained within the Hebrew. I'm now saying, well, there's these words that don't have the filler words, so I got to make sense of this. The next word, yom, day, and then bet, tet, resh, mem, that's the same word, anticipated. Lo yavo, not arrive. Ayin lamed yod kaf mem. Kaf mem suffix means you all. Ayin lamed yod, where you get the word aliyah, means elevate, prosper, success. The day anticipated will not arrive regarding your promotion, your success, your elevation, you getting out of this mess of oppression and domination by our enemies, where nature doesn't work, and all our hands are put to wasted efforts like Haggai was talking about. Well, now he's talking about something. It's like global warming, the World Economic Forum. Oh no, a pandemic. It's all efforts by the enemy, but it's all at Yahweh's design, remember, because he said, you weren't listening to me. He'll tell us how to get rid of it here. The next word, het resh vav nun, burning anger and wrath, then af Yahweh. Well, that's the nose of Yahweh, or the character of Yahweh. Wait a minute. The day anticipated will not arrive, elevating your success, the burning wrath of that character of Yahuwah that you haven't seen for centuries, which is him against your enemies. But Toram, not yet, not arriving your promotion, the day of the nose of Yahweh, the wrath of Yahweh. So it says it like 2-3 times there. Why hasn't this promise of Yahweh coming in as our champion and taking out the bad guys, the people that are trying to ruin us and take over and ruin the world, why hasn't it happened yet? The answer is furnished within the Hebrew. The commands within the Hebrew is where you'll find the inventory. That's what I believe that Zephaniah 2 verse 2 is saying. And then you get to verse 3. Bakash et Yahweh call anui haaretz. The word bakash, bet kufshin, means seek, ask, quest, search, beg, aim, intend, request, wish, desire, strive with agitation. But see, if you have no longing, no yearning, no expectation, you've got no zeal. You've got no heart in the game. This word bakash is the exact opposite of chapter 2, verse 1, where it says, the nation, because of, let's say it says, because of difficulty, they have become like dry chaff, which cannot acquire property because they have no longing or yearning. That's like the same wording almost as Ezekiel 37, where he sees this valley of dry bones, and he says, what is this? And it says, this is the whole house of Israel. And they say, we're dried out, we're lost, we have no heart. And he says, son of man, breathe life. Speak to those dry bones that don't have hope. So you can go on the internet and talk to friends and see movies, and there's all this talk about the tribulation, the rapture, we're out of here, we don't have to do anything. It just, the big guys are too big, the bad guys are too bad. We got nothing because our Elohim just won't come and help us. So let's just hope that he raptures us before it's too late for us. That's not the feeling of this word bakash. This word bakash is to seek as if you know you're going to find something. A guy was just telling me the other day that he knows a guy years ago, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years ago, somebody in, I think it was in the Philippines, believes that they had found where the Japanese during World War II had grabbed a bunch of loot, dug a hole, buried it, poured in reinforced concrete, this and that. Hidden treasure, kind of like pirates, pirate ship on Oak Island up there, Blackbeard. And they think they found where it was, but it's all booby-trapped. And it's like, so you conduct a war, you go in, take everything, ruin everything, kill everybody, and then you get a bunch of loot, gold, whatever, precious stuff, dig a hole and bury it, and then you disappear. And it's like, well, that was a lot of good, wasn't it? All that for what? Well, and then somebody finds it, and they got people to invest from all over. So, and then they kept, it was so hardened concrete, they were breaking drill bits and this and that. They went to all this effort and getting more and more investment. And all of a sudden, just as they busted into the vault and found all the treasure, supposedly the Philippine government showed up and said, it's ours, all of you guys get out of here, and took it all. What? That plays into what we were reading in Haggai. You find something great, you invest in it, you build the house, you plant the vineyard, you just when the wine gets processed, somebody else comes and takes it. In fact, remember when Gideon in the land, that's what was going on. The Moabites, I think it was, they'd let the Israelites plant the fields, do all the toil, do all the weeding, do all the watering, all the hard physical labor, then do all the reaping and all the threshing. And just as they got all the grain prepared, these guys would come riding in on their horses, beat everybody off, kill whoever they had to, and take all the grain and take all the wine and have a big party and drink it for themselves and yuck it up and we're so clever. They're so stupid. Doggone it. And so the guy was just telling me his friends lost a bunch of money because it's like, well, wait a minute. Did the Philippine government really come in and take the treasure? Well, it was their stuff that the Japanese had taken from them, 100 years before. Or was that just a story? Or did the people who got the investment money just say the government came in and took it? And meanwhile, they took it all and ran. I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody can say. But the people that they got from around the world, like here in America, to invest in that procedure to get back the lost treasure was all for nothing. And it's the same kind of stuff going on here where Yahweh says, listen, you have to have this target in mind and go for it as if you had the world's ultimate treasure to be gained for it. Yeah, but how do you gain it without somebody else stealing it? Because this is a perspective of understanding, of knowing Yahuwah, of realizing what he said to his people. And the only way they can take that from you is to lie about it, give you false translations, false teachers, or to call you stupid names for being gullible enough to go along with this. Kind of like Goliath telling David, I'm a warrior and you come at me with sticks and rocks like I'm some kind of a dog? Who do you think you are? Yeah, that kind of insult. Bakash et Yahweh, call ayin nun vav yod. Yod suffix means my. Ayin nun vav. Well, the vav is a suffix of ayin nun. So you look at ayin nun hey. And this word is the one used in Isaiah 58, meaning translated to fast. It means to answer, to be humbled by. busy about, occupied, sing about. It also means afflicted and tortured, or to be interested. It also is the word for a furrow or a rut. In other words, get yourself so focused, so one-track mind, so obsessed that you just can't get out of the rut of seeking Yahweh's. Then it says all the earth, or not all the earth, it just says the earth, but it says haaretz. But remember, we looked at the word haaretz before, meaning to have the desire to run with it. Well, I brought that word up. To seek with the desire to run with it and make it your obsession. What? Asher mishfato pa'alo. The word asher, aleph, shin, resh, means who, that, which, but it also means valid, authentic, confirmed, the actuality. Remember, asher, aleph, and yod can be replaced as prefixes, and yishar, yod, shin, resh, means straight, right, level, smooth. It's the first three letters of the word Israel. To seek the truth, the accurate answering Yahweh, listening to Yahweh, occupying yourself with Yahuwah's stuff that Pei Ayin Lamed triggers his mishpat. In other words, if Yahweh said, look, I got balancing of scales as the foundation of my throne. You want my throne to move, to act? You want my throne, the domination of my sovereignty, to be imposed on the face of your earth? You want to invoke my power into your generation's circumstances? This is the trigger. Bakasho Zadek. Seek righteousness. If I am not seeking righteousness, then it's our fault that he does not intervene. Bakasho Anoah. Seek Ayanun Vav Hey. Seek with the interest and being busy about his stuff. Aleph Vav Lamed Yod, Oli. Perhaps or maybe that's what that word means. But if you look at Aleph Vav Lamed, it means out in front, foolish, healthy, sound, strong. It's basically to be the front man on stage. It's to be the rant, 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 talking head on the video. Foster interest in righteousness, striving for the heart by which we seek Yahweh's righteousness is what triggers his mishpat. How many of who? You and me, us, when, now, doing what? Bakash ano. This is the answer right here. Zephaniah 2 verse 3. And then the Tav Samek Tav Resh Vav. Well, Samek Tav Resh is hidden, secret, concealed, sheltered, but it also means torn down, destroyed, upset, undone, disarranged, refuted, contradicted. Beyom Af Yahweh. It's translated, perhaps if you do this, you'll be protected on the day of Yahweh's wrath. But you could also say that it means by us doing this, we will be hidden and concealed and sheltered on the day that Yahweh's wrath, when the reality of everything Yahweh said happens, because we just triggered his mishpat by doing this. This study, I'm convinced, this action of studying every word, every letter, everything he said, whether it lines up with the Christian church or the Jewish rabbinical design, has nothing to do with it. The act of a human listening to Yahuwah's voice and seeking with all their heart right now. What did he say and how do we do it? Righteousness, what is that? It's doing what he said. Okay, sit down on Shabbat, keep the Moedim, take refuge in his name, listen to his voice, guard what he said to guard as valuable, the treasure of knowing what these words mean. That's righteousness. Besides being generous and kind and good and truthful, that's righteousness. And that act of Bakash Zadik is what we're all the mishpat. The bait sitting in the rat trap, you might say, that nobody wants to go to is us taking our mind, time, and energy to listen to his words. Drop down to chapter 2, verse 11. Norah. Awesome, fearsome. Nun Vav Resh Aleph. Well, Resh Aleph is the root of Resh Aleph Hey, which means to see or to be allowed to see. Nun Vav Resh, Nor, or Nun Resh is where you get the word for light. So to impart the light to see. Spectacular, spectacle, to have eyes. So to be given the eyes to see Yahweh. Aliham. Hey Mem, there. Ayin Lamed Yod, high success, promotion, advancement. That's to be allowed to see what makes Yahweh's people come out of the slump of their oppression over thousands of years. Ki Razah Et. The word ki, kaf yod, is typically one of those little transition yoke words that means if, then, thus, because, for, when, while, as, although, if, it's like, yeah. So it's just like this yoking word. Yahweh's awesome and high and lifted up. Another way to read that. Yahweh will allow us to see the awesome splendor, the spectacular thing that he built, that he arranged, which is how Aleph Tav works. The fact that we're talking about, Aleph Tav. Oh yeah, that means Jesus. When Jesus is on the beginning and the end, that's Jesus. That's Yeshua. Aleph Tav is more than that. Not to diminish him, but he is more than just the label stuck on the human that walked the earth 2,000 years ago. The Aleph Tav is everything we see that's in these 22 letters. Everything that's embedded within the Moedim, which are the heart of the Aleph Tav, the Mishkan pattern. The Resh Zion Hey, Resh Zion, Raz, means mysterious, secret. It also means thin, lean, scant, and scarce. It's like just this slightest little reference. Then there's this standalone Aleph Tav in the sentence. What? To see the slightest glimmer, like when the sun's just right, reflecting off a little piece of glass, and it's like, whoa, that reflects the sun. Boom, there it is. But it's only at a certain time of day, and it's only if you're standing in that certain spot at that time of day, because it's all a reference of angle. And it's Yahweh's countenance. It's Yahweh's face. It's who he really is. It's why things work the way they work. It's the stuff we're seeing in these words. And then it goes on to say, Kal Elai Haaretz. Now, Elohi, my Elohim, my God, the earth. So I could say, all the earth, my God. And then here's this word, Vav Yod Shin Tav Het Vav Vav. Well, you look that up and you can't find it in the dictionary. But what you'll find, Hey Shin Tav Het Vav Aleph Hey. And it's like, well, yeah, that's right. They changed the prefixes and suffixes. That's why if you know how it works, you know how to find it. But it means to bow down and prostrate. Lamed Vav, to it, for themselves. Ish Mamakomo. Hey, that's like that word mamakomka. So very similar word of that song we were talking about. Call Aleph Yod Yod, Yeye Hagoyim. All the islands of the nation, forget the translation. What this is saying is that all the earth will bow down to my God. What man, and then Mimakom means local place, a place to stand. People across the face of the earth will go anywhere, do anything at any expense, trying to find my God, El-He. Who can I trust? How do I get power, wealth, success, health, sanity? Hagoyim, the nations, but Haga means navigational efforts, meditations, ponderings, scientific research, whatever it takes, philosophical maneuverings. If we don't trust and believe our own religious theories and doctrines, let's go back, which is what we do in our modern age, dig up, which he always said not to do. He told his people, do not do this. Do not go and dig up the artifacts of the religious beliefs of all the nations that I conquered before you and bring them back to life. Rebirth the heathen ideologies that were wrong and failed, and so I wiped out those people. Do not regenerate them, bring them back to your mind and your attention so that you can do it thinking you'll find me, thinking that you'll be successful. They who were pros at that religious observance were brought to ruin because it was absolute corruption, and those who do it get destroyed. Hence Apocalypto. And the interesting thing, the great interesting thing, at the end of that movie, whether or not you like the Catholic Church, when that little rowboat comes to shore with the Spanish galleon off in the distance, and the guy steps out holding this Catholic cross and the Spanish flag, and the conquistadors, they'll put it into. I know the history. I know what happened to those guys that were doing that stuff. Yahweh's always going to use the Assyrians to take out Israel, who use Israel to take out the Canaanites, and one evil nation does more evil than the next. And if we do evil, the same thing's going to happen to us. He's going to take out the USA, Britain, Canada, Soviet Union, China, whoever it is. He's going to take them out. It's us. It's Israel. It's Yahweh's people listening to his voice, seeking righteousness. People are going everywhere trying to find the Razah Aleph Tav, the secret that's in this Aleph Tav that we have here, right here in front of us. This is what we're talking about. This whole study is the Razah Et. This whole reason why we're taking the time to talk about this stuff is because this is how you bakash anu. It may seem afflicting. Good, that's the description of the word. Trying to stir up interest. Why do I go through time after time and trying to hype the paleo? Trying to give people a sense of what this really is, to spark an interest, to make it your concern. That's Ayin Nun Hey. Because this is what will trigger it's picture in heaven the stables of his cavalry. You know, you see in Revelation 19, you see Yeshua on a horse, a white horse, sword coming out of his mouth, and behind him many horses and all these angels with white robes, or some people think they're humans on white robes, whatever. The Zavod of heaven on their white horses. Okay, where are all those horses stabled? Let's say that they're behind these gates, you know, like on a racetrack, and all of a sudden, boom, the gate opens up and the horses take off on the racetrack. Well, picture up in the heavenlies, you've got this gate and all these guys on these horses ready to come forth. Well, what the heck are they waiting for? What's going to trigger the gate to open and drop? And so, whoosh, the vote of Yeshua's legions of flaming angels in their chariots to come to our rescue. What's stopping them and holding them back? It's us. Tu bakash zadika, tu bakash anu. That's the answer right here. Well, that's what we're doing. Imagine that. This type of study of what did he say? What does it mean? How do we do it? And when we do, then like it said up there in chapter 2, verse 2, the big, ugly monster God of the Old Testament, oh, he's going to make an appearance. 5 minutes. And what's it going to look like? Interestingly enough, I mentioned this to Kurt the other day. You know, I had an interest in film, in cinematography, the movie business. And every once in a while, it's like, gosh, the movies they come up with now are so much better than the ones they had in the 70s, 1970s. And it's like, so you punch on, there was a thing on the internet, movie trailers from movies coming out October, November of 2022. It's like movie trailers. I wonder if there's anything worth going to see. My wife doesn't want to see any movies ever again, ever, because she thinks they're trying to mess with people's head and doesn't want to be emotionally manipulated or stuff put in her mind. And it's like, okay, I don't see that many movies. I see some, but see if there's anything worth looking at. And I punched on this. It's just a string of movie trailers. It looked like evil, wicked, terror, horror, ugly, nasty, demonic, devilish. It's just hell on wheels. It's like, who is making this stuff? Why are they putting this out? It's just an onslaught of horror. And my first reaction to it was like, I don't even want to look at the movie trailers. And it's like, this stuff has no appeal to me. I just don't care. I don't want to put my mind there. I don't have, it looked like everything that was in English that would be damnable by God is what they're putting out on film, filling our hearts, filling our minds. Yeah, this is, yeah. And then there's a wonder why people are becoming like that and doing these horrible things in our cities. Gosh. And then I turn to Zephaniah and I'm reading the first 2 chapters. And then I'm looking at the other Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, all the books of the minor prophets, and then you look at Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 and you realize, no, wait a minute, this isn't satanic evil. This is what it looks like for Elohim to return upon the heads of people who don't want to listen to him their own ways. And so these movie trailers is almost like reading the Bible, only instead of reading words that we can't understand and it's hard to put a sense to, it's kind of like Aesop's fables. This string of movie trailers was almost like, here, let me make it graphic. So is Yahweh actually involved in Hollywood saying, please put on film what's going to happen to people who don't want Zadokah and who won't listen to my voice? They're going to be filled with terror, their own way come upon them. It'll unleash, though some don't believe in demons, it'll unleash demonic forces, poltergeists, perhaps mental torment, generational curses, that everything you put your hand to will be destroyed. You'll be filled with diseases. Your crops will fail, your animals, your children. Wait a minute, that's all stuff that Yahweh promised would happen to his people, as well as those who aren't his people. And you realize everything Hollywood's putting out that looks like these horrors are actually biblical promises. And then, it's too late now, we're out of time, but Yahweh says that, where was it? Maybe it's in one more page here that we don't have time to get into. Can't get into Zephaniah 3. We'll have to do that next week. But he basically says hey, rejoice. Zephaniah 3:9, the time of your rejoicing, because it's now time for me to reverse. Yeah, I was going to get into Zephaniah 3:8 and 3:9 in chapter verse 14. We'll have to do that next week. But he says, the time of your punishment is over. What? That's right. Your enemy's ruling over you. The global warning, the death of all this, the destruction of all this was because you guys wouldn't listen to me. And because the 2,730-year curse is over, and you guys have returned to listen to me, now I can relieve you of all that. It's like, well, that's great. But what would it look like for him not to relieve us? Is these movie trailers. It's biblical. It's not demonic and satanic. Well, maybe it's both at the same time. Anyway, we'll get into chapter 3, verse 8, which is verse 9, where he talks about, let me just say this last thing. I know we got to go, Kurt. He says, verse 8, therefore just wait, because this is what I'm gonna do. This is what he always says. He says, I'm gonna bring all the nations together and pour out my fury upon them. And so when we see the nations coming together, we go, oh no, look at the bad guys are getting together. They're mustering their forces. It's like, wait a minute. Remember he had to muster the forces of Egypt? And then he used his own people as bait, walking across the Yom Suf, the Sea of Reeds. And then he agitated Pharaoh and says, are you going to let him get away? What do we need, Pharaoh? Aren't you going to go get him? And he stirred up Pharaoh. Yeah! And he went in there with all his chariots, and then Yahweh just put the water back on. That's his tactic. That's what he's going to do. When we see the nations muster, read Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 8. He says, I'm going to let them all gather together. I'm going to let them get all their armies. I'm going to let them get all their plans and all their technology. And then I'm going to make them trip over each other and kill each other, like he said there in Haggai. And it's like, it's what he does. But he said the problem is we don't know him. We don't trust him. We don't believe what he said is really going to happen. So that's our job right there. Know him, know who he really is, trust him, know his words, and say, okay, I believe you say what you're going to do, and so you're going to do it. And as I trust you, that empowers you or opens the gates for your cavalry to come out and do what you've planned. May it be so.
Gotta end, buddy. I'm going to pray. Father, thank you for our time together. Bless everybody who watched this. As soon as you're ready to take on our enemies, I'll welcome it gladly. So I'm tired of watching them win. So Yehovah bless. Bless everybody on this call. Keep everybody safe. Amen.
Man.
All right. Shalom, guys. The after call begins.